The forest always looks peaceful from a distance, but out in the wilderness, there are no streetlights, no quick help, and no guarantees. One wrong step on a cliff, one careless moment near a fire, or one unexpected encounter can turn a peaceful trip into a nightmare. And sometimes, those final moments are captured on camera footage that shows just how quickly a relaxing camping adventure can turn into something truly terrifying. These are 5 chilling camping deaths that were caught on camera, each one a haunting reminder that nature doesn't forgive mistakes. In October 2024, 22-year-old Belgian YouTuber Storm de Boel set out on what was supposed to be another quiet, peaceful solo trip through the wilderness of northern Sweden. His channel was small but growing, built on a simple idea. No loud music, no dramatic edits, just the sound of wind through the trees, crackling campfires, and the soft rhythm of footsteps across untouched snow. People watched his videos to relax, to escape, to feel the calm of nature through his lens. But this time, the camera was rolling during something very different. Storm had parked his car near Jokkmokk and headed into the remote landscape, the kind of place where the silence feels endless and the nearest help is hours away. Late October in Lapland can change in an instant, and that's exactly what happened. A violent blizzard rolled in overnight, with winds strong enough to knock a person off their feet and temperatures that plunged far below freezing. Snow swallowed the landscape. Visibility dropped to almost nothing, and the calm, peaceful wilderness he'd come to film turned into a white, howling void. Sometime between 2:00 and 2:36 in the morning, Storm made a desperate call to Sweden's emergency services. He was injured, possibly a broken nose, and the cold was already closing in. The wind roared at over 120 kilometers per hour, and the temperature felt closer to -18 degrees with the wind chill. He asked for help, but the conditions were so extreme that rescuers couldn't reach him. Helicopters couldn't fly. Ground teams couldn't move safely through the storm. And then, just as suddenly as the call had come in, the connection died. His phone either froze or lost power, leaving nothing but silence on the other end. Hours later, when the winds finally calmed enough for a helicopter to launch, rescuers found his body in the snow more than 2 kilometers from his campsite. It appeared he had tried to walk back toward his car, which was still over 14 kilometers away. Hypothermia had likely set in, clouding his judgment, pushing him to leave the small shelter that might have saved his life. In that blinding storm, with frozen feet and numbing cold creeping through his body, the wilderness he loved so much became the place where his journey ended. Storm had once told his father, "It took me a long time to know what I wanted, but that's what I want." He wanted quiet, nature, and the freedom of the wild. And in a haunting twist, the very camera he used to share that peace with the world became part of the story. People would remember one of the most chilling reminders of how quickly nature can turn, and how even the calmest adventure can end in silence.
Oh my God, someone's been stabbed.
We've cut out the first 61 seconds of the mobile phone video. It's just too graphic.
In April 2014, what started as a tense argument inside a quiet caravan park in Orange Grove, Western Australia, spiraled into a brutal killing, one that would later be replayed in a courtroom through a shaky amateur video. The Crystal Brook Caravan Park was supposed to be a place where people parked their caravans, grilled dinner, and relaxed after long days. Instead, that evening, it became the setting of a confrontation that would turn deadly in a matter of minutes. The conflict had been building beneath the surface. The attacker, a 34-year-old fly-in, fly-out worker, had recently learned that his girlfriend had allegedly taken part in a threesome involving the victim, a 50-year-old resident of the park, and the victim's partner. The revelation fueled anger, jealousy, and humiliation. According to testimony later heard in court, the man drove into the caravan park already enraged, shouting threats and demanding that the victim come outside. Witnesses said he banged on the caravan door, yelling, "Get out here! I'm going to kill you!" People nearby began to notice the commotion. Some stepped outside, unsure whether it was just another loud argument or something more serious. The victim came out, hands raised, reportedly trying to calm the situation down. But the attacker was already armed and visibly furious. The shouting quickly turned into a physical struggle. The two men grappled outside the caravan, pushing and shoving as the tension exploded into violence. Then, suddenly, a knife appeared. Within seconds, the confrontation crossed a line that couldn't be undone. The attacker stabbed the victim again and again 6 times in the chest and back, while terrified onlookers screamed, and someone nearby recorded the chaos on a phone. In the footage, panic spreads through the crowd. "Oh my God, someone's been stabbed," a woman can be heard saying. Moments later, the victim collapses onto the ground, motionless. He's on the floor. He's not moving. The camera keeps rolling as the attacker walks back to his car, gets inside and drives away, leaving the wounded man lying in the dirt. Other residents rush in, grabbing a first aid kit and trying desperately to stop the bleeding. One woman screams that he's dying as she attempts to help, but the wounds are too severe. By the time emergency services arrive, the victim cannot be saved. During the trial, the attacker admitted to the stabbing but claimed he had expected the confrontation to be only a fist fight. He told the court he carried the knife for protection and pulled it out after the victim allegedly came at him with a gas bottle and a screwdriver. He insisted it was a matter of survival, saying it was him or me in that moment. But witnesses painted a very different picture, one where he arrived already enraged, shouting threats to kill, and escalated the situation himself. The jury heard testimony from people who saw the attack unfold, as well as the chilling amateur video that captured the final moments. After deliberating, they returned a guilty verdict for murder. It was the second time he had been convicted for the killing, after a previous conviction was overturned on appeal. What makes the case especially disturbing isn't just the violence, but the setting. A quiet caravan park where people expected safety and routine suddenly became the scene of a brutal, emotional killing. And because it was all caught on camera, from the shouting to the stabbing to the victim's final moments on the ground, the horrifying sequence of events was preserved forever, replayed not only in court, but in the minds of everyone who saw it. In January 2025, high on the frozen slopes of Austria's tallest mountain, a young woman's final moments were quietly recorded by a distant webcam. 2 tiny headlamps moving slowly through the darkness, climbing toward a summit they would never reach together. It was the middle of the night on Grossglockner, the wind cutting across the ridgeline and temperatures dropping deep into the danger zone. The couple had started their ascent in the dark, aiming to reach the peak before sunrise. He was the experienced climber, someone who had done high-altitude tours before. She was not. According to prosecutors, this was her first time attempting a route of that difficulty in those kinds of brutal winter conditions. At around 2 a.m., just below the summit, the climb took a turn. The woman began to struggle. The cold was setting in, her strength fading with every step. The wind howled across the exposed ridge, and the temperature hovered around 17 degrees Fahrenheit. At that altitude, in those conditions, even a small mistake can become fatal within minutes. The webcam footage showed their headlamps paused on the mountainside, 2 lights in the darkness. Then, according to the prosecution, one of those lights moved away. Instead of building a shelter, wrapping her in emergency blankets, or staying with her to keep her warm, the man allegedly left her alone on the freezing slope, about 160 feet below the summit cross. She was exhausted, hypothermic, and disoriented, and in the thin, icy air that was a death sentence. He later claimed he had gone to get help. The prosecutors say he didn't call emergency services until around 3:30 a.m., more than an hour later. Even then, they allege he became unreachable, with his phone placed on silent and tucked away, while his girlfriend remained alone in the cold. By the time rescuers reached the mountain, it was too late. She had frozen to death just below the summit, the peak so close she might have been able to see it if the darkness and storm hadn't swallowed everything around her. The webcam footage, showing the 2 lights splitting apart in the night, became a haunting piece of evidence. Prosecutors argued that, as the more experienced climber who had planned the trip, he was effectively acting as her guide, and that abandoning her in those conditions amounted to grossly negligent manslaughter. What makes the story so chilling is how ordinary it might have felt at the start. Just 2 people climbing a mountain together under the stars, headlamps cutting through the darkness. But somewhere on that icy ridge, one light kept moving, and the other slowly faded into the cold.
Man is fighting for life tonight after falling into a hole and being buried by sand on the northern end of Bribie Island.
On a warm afternoon in 2023, a group of young campers gathered on the sandy shores of Bribie Island, just north of Brisbane. It was supposed to be a simple, relaxed day by the beach, friends laughing, a fire pit being prepared, and plans to roast a pig in a deep sand hole dug near the campsite. Nothing about the scene suggested that, within moments, it would turn into a desperate fight to save a life. 23-year-old Josh Taylor was among the group. Friends later described him as energetic, adventurous, and the kind of person who brought life to any gathering. The hole in the sand had been dug earlier for the cooking pit, about 1.5 meters deep. It seemed harmless enough, just part of the campsite setup, but loose, dry sand can shift without warning. At some point that afternoon, Josh stepped too close to the edge. The ground suddenly gave way beneath him. The walls of the pit collapsed in an instant, pouring down like a wave. Within seconds, he was buried under a crushing weight of sand. Panic spread across the campsite. Friends rushed to the pit, digging frantically with their hands, buckets, and anything they could find. Sand kept sliding back in as they tried to pull him out. Nearly 15 people joined the desperate effort, scooping and clawing at the ground, shouting for help and trying to reach him before it was too late. When they finally freed him, he was unresponsive. Rangers and bystanders immediately began CPR, working desperately to bring him back while emergency services rushed to the scene. He was airlifted to Brisbane's Princess Alexandra Hospital in critical condition, with family and friends holding on to hope. For 5 days, he fought for his life, but the injuries he suffered beneath the sand were too severe. Surrounded by loved ones, his life support was eventually switched off. His family later described him as the best son, brother, boyfriend, and mate we could all have wished for. A young man who would be missed every minute of every day. Police began investigating the incident and appealed for any dash cam or recorded footage from people at the campsite, hoping to understand exactly how the collapse happened. What had seemed like a harmless beach activity had turned into a fatal accident in a matter of seconds. It's a haunting reminder of how quickly things can change in the outdoors. One moment, you're laughing with friends around a campsite. The next, the ground gives way, and everything becomes a race against time.
We now know the names of the mother and her young daughter who were killed in a flood in Lerma County Friday night.
For Lisa Schilling and her 12-year-old daughter, Lily Aguilo, Buckhorn Canyon wasn't just another camping spot on a map. It was a tradition, a place where the noise of everyday life faded into the quiet of pine trees, flowing water, and crackling campfires. It was where they gathered with family, cooked meals outdoors, and lay back to watch the stars from their trailer. To them, the canyon felt safe, almost like a second home carved out in the wilderness. But on July 15, 2022, that peaceful routine was shattered in a matter of seconds. Lisa was a devoted fourth-grade teacher, known for her patience, warmth, and the way she made her classroom feel like a safe place for every student. She was preparing to start a new chapter at Bear Creek Elementary, excited for the fresh start. Lily, just days away from turning 13, was counting down to her birthday. She loved animals, the outdoors, and the simple joy of camping with her family. It was supposed to be a short, relaxing trip, one more memory before the school year began. That afternoon, dark clouds rolled in over the canyon. A steady rain began to fall, tapping against the trailer roof. At first, it didn't seem unusual, just another summer storm drifting through the mountains. People at the campsite stayed under awnings or inside their trailers, waiting for it to pass. But high above the canyon, something far more dangerous was unfolding. 2 years earlier, the Cameron Peak fire had burned through the region, stripping the hillsides of vegetation and leaving the soil loose, dry, and fragile. Without roots to hold it together, the ground had lost its ability to absorb heavy rainfall. So, when the storm intensified, the water didn't soak into the earth. It rushed downhill, gathering speed, mud, rocks, and debris as it went. Then, at around 5 p.m., the canyon filled with a deep, thunderous roar. Annette Vasquez, Lisa's sister-in-law, turned toward the sound and felt her stomach drop. Racing down the creek was a towering wall of muddy water, boulders and broken trees. A sudden flash flood, violent and unstoppable. Lisa and Lily were inside their trailer when it hit. There was no warning siren, no time to grab their belongings, no chance to run to higher ground. Within seconds, the force of the flood lifted the trailer off the ground. It was dragged into the raging current, tossed like a toy in the churning mix of water, mud, and debris. What had been their shelter, their safe place in the canyon, was suddenly just another object being swept away. Onlookers could only watch in helpless horror as the trailer disappeared into the chaos. Emergency calls flooded into the Larimer County Sheriff's Office around 5 p.m., but the destruction had already unfolded. Rescuers rushed into the canyon, navigating debris-filled water and unstable terrain, searching desperately along the creek. For 2 long hours, teams combed the area, clinging to hope that Lisa and Lily had somehow escaped or found higher ground. Family members waited, praying for good news, refusing to believe the worst. But as the evening light began to fade, that hope slipped away. At around 7:30 p.m., the search ended in heartbreak. Lisa and Lily were found more than half a mile from their campsite, carried downstream by the powerful floodwaters. Their dogs, who had been inside the trailer with them, were never found. The tragedy didn't just claim 2 lives, it shattered an entire family. Lisa's husband, already grieving recent losses, was now forced to face the unimaginable reality that both his wife and daughter were gone. In the days that followed, friends, co-workers, parents of Lisa's students, and members of the community came together to support him. An online fundraiser was created to help with funeral expenses, and donations poured in from people whose lives Lisa and Lily had touched. Messages of love and grief filled the page, each one a reminder of how deeply they were cherished. But even with the outpouring of support, the canyon that once held so many happy memories had become the place where everything changed forever. A trip meant for peace and family bonding had turned into a tragedy in the blink of an eye. Proof that in the mountains, danger can arrive without warning, and sometimes there's no time to escape.